Okay, welcome. We are not as small and elite a group as I thought we were going to be. It's nice to have you all here. I'm John Voll. I'm at the Walid Center for Muslim Christian Understanding. And one of the real pleasures of being associated with the center is that every year we have research fellows who come from around the world and are working on projects where their primary responsibility is to get their project done or to do a project. And it brings to the center and it brings to the School of Foreign Service and Georgetown a very important dimension of intellectual community. And we've been fortunate over the years to have some very interesting and very good scholars from Turkey, and that's what we have again today. We have Mehmet, who is Assistant Professor of Sociology at Marmara University, and his kind of more full vita is there on one of the little mimeograph sheets, but he is a specialist on the study of, one has to word things carefully. He's maybe not a specialist in marriage, but a specialist in the study of marriage, right?
Right.
Of marriage and family, and has been working, I think, in some very interesting conceptual areas as well as doing really on-the-ground field research as well. And so that he is going to be talking to us today on intermarriage of Turkish citizens in the U.S. Now, this is not a new, intermarriage is not a new subject for him. You've already published on intermarriage in Turkey, right?
Right.
And so that now we're looking across cultural lines to North America, and I'm looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wall. Hello, everyone. Family and society can be seen the double face of the same coin, or the two sides of the clear folder like this one. If you assume that this side is society and the other side is family, you can see each other from the every side. So it is very important to study family in order to understand a better society. Today's societies, as you know, have become more and more multicultural and multi-religious than ever. As reflecting the harmonization of cultural and religious differences, today the intermarriage rate has reached its highest level throughout history, especially in the U.S. More specifically, according to a Pew Research Center report, about 15% of all marriages in the United States in 2010 were between spouses of different race or ethnicity. Looking at all married couples in 2010, regardless of when they married, the share of intermarriage reached an all-time high of 8.4%. So many studies, as Dr. Wall reported, from different disciplines have focused on intermarriage in the U.S. And they looked at the different dimensions of intermarriage in the U.S. since the 20th century. However, the intermarriage of Turkish citizens in the U.S. has been neglected as a research domain. According to the Turkish Embassy in Washington, D.C., 189,791 Turkish citizens live in the U.S. Therefore, I decided to have a research on the nature of intermarriage of Turkish citizens in the U.S. And this research is the first of its kind. I'll discuss the situation of intermarriage of Turkish citizens concerning family, identity, assimilation, culture, religion, conversion, marital stability, and child raising throughout the marriages. But it is not going to take 2 hours. Due to the lack of time, I will not discuss the literature and methodology broadly, but let me briefly introduce data collection and data analysis. Instruments for data collection were semi-structured questionnaire, sociodemographic questionnaire, and observation. I analyzed the data by running the SPSS software program for the quantitative data, and I ran the Atlas TI for analyzing the qualitative data. Interviews took a time from January the 2nd till May the 13th, so it was really hard for me I totally interviewed with 14 couples, which is 28 people. And the most interesting thing is that almost 20 couples rejected to have an interview with me because of the different reasons, such as lack of time, rejection of the spouse, and etc. Some of them also converted, so they don't want to share their something secret. I only interviewed with the couples, but not their children. It may be one of the weakest side of the study. So this research project was supported by the Scientific and Technological Research Council of Turkey. The first thing I would like to mention is intermarriage, which is more complex phenomena than we think. So therefore, though I ask many questions about different topics in order to measure the characteristics of intermarriage of Turkish citizens in the US, I will not share all of them because of the lack of the time. So I will focus on the main subjects. Now I'd like to talk about the sociodemographic characteristics of couples whom I interviewed. So the topics I'm going to talk about are sociodemographic characteristics of the couples, general characteristics of the intermarriage, intermarriage and religious identity, intermarriage, ethnic identity, and assimilation. And finally, I'm going to talk about maintaining the marriage. Generally, I interviewed with 14 wives and 14 husbands. They married to each other. And the average age was almost 53 years old. And the lowest income is 0, which is no income. These are the ladies do not work, but housewives or mommy, they describe themselves like that. And the highest is 500,000. The total individual income on average was $62,571, and the total family income was $82,571 on average. So level of education, 6 of the spouses that had a PhD, 13 of them. If you look at this, the first thing, this one, sorry about that. This is the percentage, and this is the characteristics, and that is the number, that is individual, not the couple. So 7 of the spouses had master's degree, 6 of them had PhD, 2 of them graduated from 2 years college, and 13 of them graduated from 4 years college. Employment status, 42% of them employed, although 35% of them retired. 14 of them self-employed, and 7% of them now working, not looking for a job because of being housewife. When you look at the occupation, you see how different jobs they do. Psychologist, program manager, program coordinator, professor, principal educator, and etc. How long they married? I think that is one of the interesting things, because the official divorce rate in the US is more than 50%. So it takes our attention on how long they have been married. And 2 of them married, one couple here, married for 54 years. That's amazing. That is amazing, especially in the US. And 1 couple married for 52 years, 1 couple married for 50 years, 1 for 40 years, 1 for 38 years, 1 couple for 20 years, and etc. So the question as how long they have been married, and the answer is it is ranging from 1 year to 54 years. Is that the first marriage? Because, if it is first marriage or the second or third one, may differ in terms of intermarriage and its characteristics. So 21% of them had a marriage before this marriage, although 78% had no marriage before that. So it is their first marriage. Number of children. One of the interesting findings of my research is that almost 50% of the couples had no children. 50% of couples had no children. That is very interesting. I was not assuming to find these findings when I started to study, but 16 of them, that is the 8 couples, had no children. Although eight of them, I mean 4 family had 2 children, and 1 family had 4, and 1 family had 6 children. General characteristics of intermarriage. I'm going to talk about how they meet, how they date, how they marry. What about their family's reaction? Because they decide to marry to someone from different ethnicity and from different religion. That's very significant, and their wedding ceremonies. The first issue about intermarriage is gender and intermarriage. I mean, who is more likely to marry, female or male? Generally speaking, the answer is varying in the US in terms of race and the region. If we talk about the Turkish citizens in the US, unfortunately there is no official or unofficial data about who marry or who would like to marry to someone from different ethnicity or religion. Because I asked this question to the Turkish Embassy in DC, and they said, no, we don't have any data. So, but talking about my research, I can tell you that in this research, 9 husbands and 5 wives were Turkish. How they meet? Couples met in different places and countries, like in the US, Turkey, Kazakhstan, and Cyprus, in different circumstances. They met at the university, party, bar, cultural or social event, or at the work. Either their friend or themselves introduced them. For the dating, couples usually date before the marriage, ranging from a few months to a few years. The characteristics of dating is as typical as in the US. 2 converted cases were the exception, and couples reported that they have never dated, which is unusual in the US because of the Islam's concerns about dating. One of the wives who converted to Islam just before a year from the marriage said, "Oh, no dating, no." Turkish husbands also said, "Dating? We didn't date because, well, you don't call it dating. In the Western understanding of dating, we didn't have that." Parents' reaction to the intermarriage decision of couples also varies from case to case. In some cases, parents approved the marriage and couples had no problem. In some others, though parents had some questions at the beginning, after a while they totally approved the marriage. In contrast, some parents didn't approve it because of ethnic or religious reasons, child raising, long distance from Turkey to the US, or prejudices against Muslims or non-Muslims. For example, prejudices against Muslims as marrying with 4 wives. That is very common. When I came to the US, the question was raised to me firstly was, are you marrying to 4 wives? That's very common. And also prejudices against Jewish as not being circumcised, losing the ethnic and or religious identity, and the stereotypes of American people on the movies were mentioned as some reasons for disapproval. This Turkish husband's case maybe summarize all the reasons for the disapproval. He said that since we were with a bit different backgrounds, and I knew that my parents wouldn't allow me or wouldn't like me to marry a foreigner, so we decided to elope. They had no wedding, so they eloped. And I asked, okay, what about your family's reaction? He said, oh, at the beginning, it was pretty bad. I think that they were shocked. I asked, why? He said, it was those days, it was not like today. I mean, the people, Turkish people especially, didn't like when they sent their sons overseas, they didn't want them to get married and come back or stay there. They expected their children to be back. And also, I don't think that even her parents didn't feel comfortable marrying to a foreigner. The wedding ceremonies is also interesting to me. And what is interesting is that many of them reported that they had no wedding ceremony. Let me talk about it. Another finding of this research is the negative influence of intermarriage on wedding ceremony, because many couples reported that they either had no wedding or a little party. That is, after getting the official marriage license, and one of the couples reported that they eloped because of the fear of disapproval of the parents, both sides, American and Turkish. Couples who reported that they didn't have a wedding ceremony in any way or had a little ceremony or party said it was because they didn't like or want wedding ceremony, long distance between Turkey and the US, and because of the time and money issues, bad family relationships or no relationship with the immediate family, an inconvenience situation at that time. On the other hand, some couples had a wedding ceremony either in Turkey or in the US or both. Among these couples, some of them had a very traditional Turkish wedding ceremony like henna night and etc. And some of them had mixed cultural wedding ceremony like Turkish American or Catholic Turkish or Jew Turkish. This issue brings us to another discussion, intermarriage and religious rituals for wedding. Some of the couples didn't have anything religious for wedding because they do not care about religion, and religion doesn't play any big role in their life. In contrast, if one spouse was more or less religious, asked for religious marital rituals because of the religious reasons, or request of parents or immediate family and the traditional reasons. For example, two of the Catholic wives who still go to church and describe themselves as much as Catholic as much as pre-marriage, asked for Catholic wedding at the church. In fact, a couple after 10 years of marriage, went to Brazil, where she was coming from, and had a Catholic marriage ceremony. It is interesting that the bishop asked her if her husband would convert. It is also interesting that one of the Turkish husbands was asked to have Catholic rituals at the church, but he rejected, and then they were married by an episcopal bishop at the friend's house, not at the church. Another Turkish wife also said they were married by a bishop. The case was very similar to the previous one. By the same token, some couples reported that they had an Islamic marriage ceremony that's called like imam nikah in Turkey, either in Turkey or in the US. Although some of them were not practicing any religion, but subscribes to one, like technically describe himself or herself as Muslim, but do not practice. But they asked for the imam nikah, that is the Islamic marriage ceremony. They asked for Islamic marriage ceremony because of their parents or Turkish culture. There is a dilemma for the Turkish wives who were married to non-Muslim or non-religious husband. Why? Because Islam prohibits Muslim women to marry to non-Muslim or non-religious husbands. But they married with them and had an imam nikah. Furthermore, imam or the person who performed an Islamic marriage ceremony approved the marriage as acting against to Islamic law. So the question, which comes first, law or religion? You have the answer. For some cases, it's not general. For instance, one of the spouses said that, so I made him to ask the hand of marriage from my father, so I made him to talk about it, told to my father, and asked face to face, so he came, he traveled back, and then we had a big engagement ceremony. We invited all of my cousins and everything else, and then and my parents had the imam come and had the religious kinda. She's not practicing Muslim. She described herself as secular as everyone in the US, but she had because of the familial reasons. Intermarriage and religious identity. Finally, all converted couples. I had 3 wives who converted to Islam either just before the marriage or after the marriage. All converted couples mentioned that they had an imam nikah at the Islamic Center in the US. And I think now it is time to talk about the relationship between intermarriage, religious identity, and conversion. Intermarriage and religious identity. It is not easy to say intermarriage has negative or positive influence on the religious identity of the spouses. Thus, it is safe to say intermarriage and its influence on religious identity varies based on the case. In some cases, intermarriage has no influence on the religious identity of the spouses who describe themselves with secular identity or not practicing Muslim, or not practicing Christian, or not practicing Jew. Since they believe it without belonging, that is the term in sociology we use, or for the religious studies, believing without belonging or belonging without believing. So since they believe it without belonging, they describe themselves as a Muslim or whatever the religion is without practicing pre and or post marriage. For example, one of the Christian wives said, I will still say I'm Christian. I asked, practicing Christian? She said, no, absolutely not practicing. I asked, before and after the marriage? She said, before and after. On the other hand, intermarriage has influenced the religious identity and practice of some spouses. Intermarriage was also the reason for conversion. One American wife who was raised as a Christian converted to Islam after a year of the marriage, and two other American wives, also raised as a Christian, converted to Islam just before the marriage, but their relationships with the husbands before the intermarriage influenced their decision about the conversion, and it may be the reason why they married to a Muslim Turkish guy. To their practice, two wives didn't have a headscarf, whereas one has. They all practice Islam as their husbands do. For example, when I asked, what kind of Islamic practices you do? One wife said, so of course we pray and fast, Ramadan. Praying means they pray 5 times every day. And read Quran and give the sadaqah, that is charity. And wish we'll be able to go to pilgrimage. So we also try to be good neighbors and good citizens and be kind to everybody. So this is part of Islam. Therefore, intermarriage has influenced the religious preference and practices of some spouses in some ways. I think I need to show you this pie chart, religious ID before the marriage, in this sense. As you see here, 15%, that is the 14 spouses, all these Turkish, describe themselves as Muslim pre-marriage, before the marriage. And one wife raised as a Roman Catholic and became Muslim just a year ago from the marriage. And one here, I guess, raised as a Catholic, and one here Roman Catholic. She is here. And two of the wives converted to Islam just a year ago from the marriage, and one converted after the marriage. And here also we see 3 of them, that is 10%, almost 11%, describe themselves as Christian, and 3.5% describe, that's the one, Christian Scientists, and 2 of them describe themselves as Jewish, pre-marriage. What about the post-marriage? How they describe their religious identity? So let's look at the pie chart. You see, that is 60%. That is 17% of them describe themselves as Muslim. I mean, 14 of them were Turkish husbands and wives, and 3 of them the American wives. But it doesn't mean that all 17 practice Islam. So you see the differences. 2 of them describe themselves as none. One as Protestant, 2 Catholic, and 2 Christian, 1 Christian Scientist, and 2 Jewish. So I can say that in some cases, intermarriage has an influence on the religious identity. So, intermarriage and religious identity. I mean, my findings also are supported by other researchers, since the literature says intermarriage weaken or degenerate the religious identity and the practice of couples, and especially children. Okay, let me talk about the intermarriage and religious identity. And the converted case I showed here, and why they convert and why they do not convert. I'm going to talk about the reasons for conversion or not conversion. I can share three major reasons why spouses do not change their religious identity. As one, lack of belonging to a religion. Two, having similar lifestyles and or focusing on similarities between religions, cultures, and etc. lifestyles. And three, respecting each other's belief and religion. Since I gave many examples on the couple's lack of belonging to religion, I'll briefly talk about the other two. Lack of having similar lifestyles, focusing on similarities. One of the reasons why spouses do not change their religious identity may be explained by having similar lifestyles or focusing on similarities. For example, one spouse said, but you know, the Quran and the Torah and the Bible are all very similar in their core tenets. This is what I think is interesting about all religions. We are all very similar. We are probably more similar than we think. They all come from the same place, and they are all just adaptations, slightly different. You know, some people cut their hair a certain way, some people don't. But at the same time, at the base, it is all very similar. Another spouse said that, I think that our spiritual lives are pretty independent of each other. Sometimes he comes to church with me, but I can't really go to the mosque with him, so I don't, do that. But I think our religions do have things in common, like we have a common ground to work from, and I think we have the same basic understanding of morality, so we don't come directly into conflict in any major areas. One of them said, our cultures, even though it looks too different at the family base, there are a lot of things are very similar. Another reason for not converting or for not changing the religious identity. Respecting each other's belief and religion. The other reason why spouses do not change their religious identity may be explained by respecting each other's preference, which is very significant in any type of marriage. Also, couples usually emphasize the role of respect as one of the 5 keys for happy and long-term marriage. For example, one Christian wife said, respecting each other as individuals, respecting each other's beliefs, respecting each other's decisions to make the choices and believe the things that are the other wants to believe. That is the key to everything, isn't it? Another spouse said, I was raised very religious, went to church school, and, I feel very comfortable with my religion. I don't have any major issues with it. I wouldn't change. I wouldn't change. Since I am married, I don't think it has made any difference in my religious life. I don't attend church a lot because there isn't a church in our area. It is pretty out of our way, but I usually go when I'm visiting my family or for any major holidays. So there is no change in your religious life and your religious understanding before and after the marriage, I asked. She said, yeah. Reasons for conversion. I already told you 2 wives converted to Islam, either just before marriage or after the marriage. One of the main research questions that I tried to find its answer was, if any spouse convert? If so, why? What are the reasons? In contrast to keeping the same religious identity, 3 American wives converted to Islam. The reported reasons for conversion were seeing practicing Muslims as a good example, finding the answers of their questions in the mind about life, hereafter, and etc., and importance of family in Islam. I want to share a very interesting story of a converted wife. She was a conservative Christian and was becoming a youth pastor, but she converted to Islam. She said, that's a little bit longer, sorry about that. She said, one of the things that attracted to me Islam was the emphasis on family, how important family is. And for me, of course, family is about communication and not always agreeing, but managing to live together. Managing to find a solution when there is a problem. I love Muhammad, Islam's example, and when I was younger, my mother was a conservative Christian. Even when she began to change her religious views, I still continued on the conservative Christian path, and I actually attended a Christian university with the goal of becoming a youth pastor. And when I went to New Orleans, I actually went as an intern to a pastor at church. So I was there, but I saw lots of things that I didn't agree with about my religion, and especially about the idea about the Trinity was always troubling to me, and I saw a lot of hypocrisy. So I decided to kind of back away from the Christian church, and when I did that, I said, I'll still pray, I'll still fast, I'll still do everything I was doing before, but I'll just by myself. Then I was working at a normal secular job. Happened to be that the Turkish guy was across the kiosk, and I saw him. He was maybe 3 or 4 years older than me. There were lots of women walking by. He never looked at the women, and he would cross his heart every time for prayers and go to pray. When I saw him, I said, I was typical American, and my understanding of Islam is they are all a bunch of terrorists. They all have four wives. They all have 4 wives. They all beat their wives. They have oil in the backyard. They ride the camel all day. And when I saw him here, he is living, it made me question why is this guy normal, devoted, and I watched his life for 1 year? Because I was waiting for him to do something wrong. I said, okay, I have to find out why this guy is like this. And I was very scared of him because I never saw him speak to a woman, and so there were some other Turkish guys working there. I said, why is this guy so devoted? And they said, well, he's a Muslim. I said, yeah, but you are a Muslim, and you smoke and drink, and you talk to all the girls here, and he's like, but that guy, that one, he's a real Muslim? So then I began to study, and I challenged one of the Turkish guys. I said, if I can read the Bible, you are going to convert to Christianity? He said, if I can do the Quran, would you just promise to read it? I said, okay. And I started to read, and it humbled. And first page, I said, hey, there is nothing here about being a terrorist. And second page, third page, by the time I was halfway through, it was in my heart. I had to convert. I know I wouldn't have been comfortable if I didn't change my religion, so that is why I converted. That is a very interesting story to me. Another thing, I already did it. Intermarriage, ethnic identity, and assimilation. If you look at this pie chart, you will see one describe himself or herself as white American, 14 as Turkish, 1 as German white American, 1 as French American, 1 Caucasian, 1 American Jewish, and 5 just American, describe themselves ethnically. That in sociology we use ethnicity for the culture and the race for the color, and show their ethnic identity before the marriage. And here, ethnic ID after the marriage. What's interesting in that here, you see 50% describe themselves as Turkish before the marriage. Before the marriage. Here, look at it. It is 28.5, almost, let's say, 29% describe themselves as Turkish. So intermarriage weakens their ethnic identity. How? Here, 5 of them said, I'm Turkish American. Okay, they still keep their Turkish identity, but at the same time, they describe themselves, okay, I'm Turkish and American, Turkish American. And one of the Turkish guys said that I am world citizen, I am blind of color, and etc. And 5 describe themselves as American, 1 Brazilian, 1 European American, 1 German Irish, and you see. In many cases, intermarriage broadens the world of the couples and their children as becoming multicultural, because they learn a lot about other cultures, religions, family structure, etc. On the other hand, although Turkish spouses visit Turkey, participate in events of Turkish associations, furnish their house in Turkish style, and do some other things to keep their and their children's Turkish identity strong. Intermarriage weakens their ethnic identity one way or the other. It is same for non-Turkish spouses as well. Likewise, intermarriage usually linked with assimilation in intermarriage studies. For this research, it is impossible to say that any of the spouses has never or totally assimilated. However, it is safe to say that Turkish and non-Turkish spouses have been affected from each other's culture, and more importantly, from the dominant culture, that is American culture. Again, I don't mean that they are totally assimilated, but I say they are assimilated more or less and become Americanized. Because it is stated that in previous researches, achievement of occupational or economic success motivates Americanizations. And I think it is true for the couples I've interviewed. To the children, it is one of the interesting things, because either parents of the spouses or the spouses care about the children, and they think about their children, their ethnic identity and religious identity. In many cases, to the children, it is clear that we need to have another study on children of Turkish intermarried citizens. Based on the couples report, they have become more American, their children become more American by adopting the culture and language than any other due to growing and living in the US. Another important thing about children and ethnic identity is that Turkish spouses gave at least one Turkish name to their children in order to keep their Turkish identity alive. Reports names are here. Yeah, let me show you some pictures. Here, you see, that is çaykur, that is Turkish tea. That is one of the couple's houses, and almost all of the couples offered me either a Turkish coffee or tea. That is Turkish tea. And these are all Turkish. Here, that is very Ottoman. That's very unique and Ottoman. And also, you see, that's also Turkish. Here, these are all Turkish, sort of headscarf. These are also Turkish. What is interesting is that, I'm sure you know what is that. This side is Turkish, and for evil eyes. Evil eyes. That is the entrance door of the Jewish, Muslim, Turkish couple, and they put that one in order to keep themselves and their house from the evil eyes, and that is something Jewish. It is called as mezuzah, for keeping from the evil eyes. They put two of them together in front of the door, so I think it is the picture of how they cohabitate within the respect and mutual understanding. See, this carpet came from Turkey. Yeah, these are the names of the children. You see, although these are not actually Turkish, coming from Arabic roots, but we accept them as Turkish. So they put at least one name Turkish. And finally, do I have time? Okay, almost done. I asked questions not only about identity, religion, culture, and child raising, but also some provocating questions like, if you had a chance, to whom you would like to marry? Reasons for not divorcing, why don't you divorce? And major keys for marital happiness and stability. For the couples, personality comes first and is much more important than ethnicity, religion, and other things. When I asked the question like, if you had a chance, to whom you would like to marry, all of them, either Turkish or non-Turkish, stated that they would like to marry to the same partner because they chose the right person and happy. And it is also the reason for why they don't divorce. When I asked them, how did you maintain the marriage for many years? While some of them said, I don't know, it just happened. One of the American husbands may give us the ways for maintaining the marriage for 52 years. 52 years. I asked, you have been married for 52 years, and let's talk about the long-lasting marriage. How did you maintain your marriage for 52 years? He said, I think we had a good, relationship. He said, I think we had a good relationship, a good loving relationship. But there were terrible strains. I think, being aware of and accepting that there are going to be differences, that there is going to be ups and downs. It doesn't mean things are falling apart or anything like that. And kind of keeping in mind the good things, the benefits, and not emphasizing the downs. It helps. Kind of keeping in mind who it is you married and why. And another thing, let me read something here. I don't know the author, that is something anonymous. And for the first week of the marriage, Guru, whoa, my dream happens real, right? Well, do you want me to break up with you one day? Guru, no, please never tell me that again, right? Are you falling in love with me? Guru, of course, right? Do you consider breaking up with me? Guru, of course, no. Right, well, can you give me a kiss? Guru, sure, to your face and eyes. Right, okay, are you going to hit me one day? Never, I'm not that kind of male. Can I trust you? Sure, right? Honey, that is the first week of the marriage. What about after a year? Let's use the same talk and read from down to top. Right, honey, Guru, sure. Right, can I trust you? Guru, never. I am not that kind of male. Right, okay, are you going to hit me one day? Sure, to your face and eyes. Well, can you give me a kiss? Of course, no. Right, do you consider breaking up with me? Guru, of course. Are you falling in love with me? No, please never tell me that again. Well, do you want me to break up with you one day? Whoa, my dream happens real. What about the intermarriage? We see and we hear this dialogue very often in the US or in other parts of the world. So this is the couple who married for 52 years. And I used their pictures with their authorization, with their permission. And they still fall in love with each other, married for 52 years. And you see that? That's his heart. Like this. And they are so happy. Let me talk about it very briefly. I'm sure you know Frank Sinatra's song, Love and the Marriage. That's an illusion. You know that? Love and the marriage, that's an illusion. Is that real for every marriage? For some, no. But I have a counter argument to him because love takes an important part for maintaining the marriage, and according to some research studies, almost all couples believe that marriage doesn't kill the love. Couples mentioned that love is not something constant. It has ups and downs, and therefore marriage itself doesn't kill the love, but the couples. Although some of them reported that they didn't fall in love with their wife or husband before the marriage, it is something unbelievable that almost all of them said they fell in love with each other now because they keep the love awake. I just want to share a quote that I almost had the same dialogue with other couples. I asked, did you fall in love with your wife before the marriage? We must have at that time. It was a long time ago. Otherwise, we couldn't make a decision that fast. I asked, do you still fall in love with your wife? He said, I guess so. I mean, yes or no? He said, yeah, I mean, we love each other. We love each other more. Okay, some people believe that marriage kills the romance. Do you believe that? He said, no, I don't. You don't? I don't believe that marriage kills romance. So you still fell in love with your wife? Of course. Another husband said that, not necessarily, no. And if you are constantly seeking romance, that is not that. If you just, if you are lucky and winning quite often lottery, then you may have more romantic moments. I don't believe it is not a very constant romance. There is ups and downs. I mean, it's a regular life. More companionship and then romance is a part of life. So I asked them, what are the 5 major keys for happy and long-lasting marriage, long-term marriage? The most common 5 things are respect, love, understanding, patience, helpfulness, and tolerance. When I ask them what are the 5 keys for happiness and long-term marriage, they usually need it sometimes. They cannot tell me the 5 keys just by one click. Some of them never completed the 5 keys, never. Some of them completed after the interview. They came and told me, hey, the other 2 is like that. And for example, one of the husbands said, I don't know if I have the 5 keys, but I would say tolerance is the one. Of course, keys are different in nature, and these 5 are the most common. The others are honesty, openness, communication, romance, having adventures, excitement, respect, understanding, motivating, love, tolerance, recognizing the other, patience, like, understanding, being helpful, understanding spouse's needs, have good friends and family, prayer, devotion, and shared goals. Finally, I asked them if they have ever thought about divorce. Have you ever thought about divorce? This is the question I asked them. Almost all of them responded either as no or not seriously. For example, when I asked, please think for a moment and tell me, have you ever thought about divorce? One of the husbands said, no, because we are happy. And one wife said, no. I said, no. She said, no, because I think that you can work out almost any problem. I think that there are very few problems in the world that are just not comparable. So I think that if you try hard enough, you can solve almost any issue. At the end, I wish a successful marriage to everyone in the world, and thank you for listening.
Thank you.